Let's keep it short. This is the lens that you need. I'm kidding, it's just a cup. It's a cup. But this is the lens you need. You probably hear a lot if you check with different photographers and check what they would buy if they were to start out again. Which to me doesn't make any sense, because we all like different things. We have different preferences, different styles in photography, so we are quite unique in what we like. So let's do it like that. Let's find out who you are, and depending on what you like, find a lens that would fit your specific area. May it be animal photography, sports photography, macro photography, landscape photography. So let's see who you are. What I'll do is I'm going to give you the focal range, so the millimeter number on the lens, which determines how much you can zoom in, as well as some other considerations. So after that, you can do the Googling and find the brand and the budget basically that fits you. Let's start with macro photography. Macro basically means you're getting really close to the subject, like photographing the eyes of a fly or maybe food photography. But generally it means that you get so close to the subject, but you can still focus where other lenses can't. That's the main purpose. Now, have a look at my portfolio, because you'll see that none of what I do is macro photography. Yeah. So if the very specific area of macro photography is your jam, full transparency, can't help with that. You can still use macro lenses in everyday life, but I don't do very close photography things. So below this video in the description is a video from Mark Wiemels, and he knows what he's talking about, so make sure to check it out if that is really what you want to get into. Good luck. So let's go to something I can actually help with. Animal photography. Is this your thing? Or this? Or maybe that? If the answer is yes, then this is what you might need. And I know, I can hear you already. Are you mad? This is super expensive and huge and heavy? Yes. You're right. So let's separate a bit further. Where are your animals? If you want to get, for example, into bird photography, or generally photography where the animal is far away or runs away as you get closer, then you need to be able to get very close to your animal from very far away. And indeed, that's your thing. This is a 200 to 600 millimeter lens, meaning basically you can zoom in a stupid amount, which is what you need, for instance, if you ever try to take a picture of a hummingbird. You know how hard that can be if you ever tried, unless you're at a feeding station. Now with this range of 200 to 600 millimeters, most brands have their own version of it, and you can also have some cheaper brands, like from Sigma, for example. They create a beautiful blurred background. The images, at least on this one, are razor sharp, but the thing is, these things are expensive and very heavy. Not to mention the size. Lenses with that kind of range are always a bit expensive. So this right now is from Sony itself. It's like 1,500, 600 or something like that these days. And just be aware that large lenses like that, they do suck in low light, especially in that price range. So if you want to go for that, make sure that's okay. The good thing is, of course, you can use the lens for more than just animal photography. Stay tuned. So this is if the animal is far, but what if it isn't? What if it's just in the zoo or in your backyard? If you don't need to zoom in that much to these animals, or they don't run away as you come closer, then something like this might do the trick. This particular lens is in the range of 24 to 200 or something like that, but anything from around 20 to 200 will do the trick. So just to illustrate, 600 is stupid close. We can zoom in a stupid amount. And 50 is more or less what you are visually perceiving, right? So 20 to 200 gives you a very good range, because it goes from rather wide, which is 20, to 200, which is still a good amount of zoom. The good thing about a lens like this in that range is that it's basically much lighter, it's way cheaper, and way more versatile as well. So for the first lens, if you are into animal photography, unless you are constantly on safari basically, and especially if it's your first lens that you buy after the kit lens, I would go for the range of approximately 20 to 200, which is so versatile, cheap and light. Perfect lens. Now also consider, it's important to look at the focal range, so how far you can zoom in, but the aperture is also important because it determines how much light the lens basically can let into the camera and determines with how much light you can work with. The lower that particular number, the better the lens can handle low light, meaning you can keep your ISO low and don't get much noise. Usually if a lens has open aperture of 1.8 or 2.8, that is perfect for like low light photography. But the 200 to 600 millimeter lens, the big one basically at that price range, has 5.6, meaning it needs a lot of light. 20 to 200 has 3.5, so it's a little bit, closer to that 1.8, so it means it can let more light in on an open aperture. So again, for animals, 20 to 200. But what about sports photography? You really like that? If you do, it's basically the same. If the sports that you're looking at is far away and you need to get very close, you know the drill, 200 to 600. And for that purpose, there are also smaller ones which go from 200 to 400 or from 100 to 400 or in that range. I don't have one like that, but they are a little bit lighter and also a little bit cheaper. So, might also be something to consider if you are into sports photography, but you need to get kinda close. If you don't need to get that close, you know the drill for that one as well. Approximately 20 to 200. It's so versatile. So let's talk about people. You like to take pictures of humans. Where? In the street? Awesome, you want to capture moments as they happen, real moments of sadness, happiness, and so on. Yep, 20 to 200 approximately. Yeah. You see there is a theme going on here, right? You might be thinking, yeah, but why can't I use a big one, 200 to 400 or 200 to 600 basically for street photography as well? You can, but street photography often lives from evening scenes or dark scenes. But as the big ones don't like to deal with low light, a compact version, 22 to 100, can still get you reasonably close, but can still work in a little bit lower light. Also in street photography, the scenes that you have to photograph, you have to identify first, so for that you have to see them with your eye. So if you can see them with your eye, that should be more than enough. Now, what about portraits? Maybe you're one of those people, or one of those TikTokers maybe, that like to approach people on the street and like to take their portrait. If this is your thing, you might consider a prime lens, which is a lens that you can't zoom in or out with, usually in the range of maybe 20, 25, 30 or 50 millimeters, but you can't zoom. The awesome thing is that they do have an aperture of 1.8, basically meaning that they are very, very good in low light, which is fantastic for street photography. And they create this beautiful blurred background, that bokeh that street photographers and portrait photographers are looking for. They are super light and small, and they're also reasonably priced. You can get one of those maybe around €100 depending on the brand that you want to go for. As I said, the downside is you can't zoom in at all, so you need to physically move back or forth to create space between your subject or get closer. Now, have a look at this picture right here though. Do you see how beautifully the background is blurred? Well, here's the thing. I don't really use that because it's just an additional lens to carry around, and if you're a travel photographer like me, every gram counts. So why don't I use it? Well, because you can get the bokeh effect, this beautiful blurred background, also with the 20 to 200. Just step away from your subject a little bit and then zoom in, and you're gonna get the same blurred background and it looks amazing. So if your thing is portraiting in low light, you can go for a prime lens because it'll be worth it for that kind of photography. If you do it, over the day, the evenings, and you need a bit more of a versatile lens that also creates a beautiful bokeh, 22 to 100 millimeters should do the trick. Moving on to nature and landscape, which is basically my jam. But I am a little torn here because there is simplicity in a lot of nature pictures. Like this beautiful waterfall with the sheep in Iceland. There are sheep, there's a waterfall, and it's simple. Or this one, there's a mountain, moon, water, and done. To get this without a busy sky or a huge foreground, you basically need to zoom in, and you know where this is going. That's right, 20 to 200. But especially, and here's the thing, 20, which is the starting range, kind of, at least depending on the lens you get, is quite wide, so you can get a lot of options to include a nice foreground in your photos. But also with the same lens, you can get close to the waterfalls, close to your animals, whatever you need to do in your landscape area, you can zoom in, you have options. For instance, this image right here that I took in Tokyo a couple of years ago is basically that lens on the widest sort of setting I have, so I can't set it any wider than that, and I just pointed it down a little bit. So you can indeed get a lot of area. That's great, but now look at that. This is definitely a little bit wider. So if you're zooming, you're trying to keep the photo simple, but the wider you go, the more you're trying to capture the grandeur of a place. So if 20 is already wide on the 20 to 200 option, consider 10 to 20. So basically we go from wide to extra wide. But you can play much more with the foreground. So consider, for example, this one right here from the Lofoten, where the straw walls are taking up a huge portion of the foreground, but you can still see far in the distance. Or this one here at a Sardinian beach. I just placed the camera really close to that rock formation to get the foreground filled, and then have this beautiful sunset in the background, or sunrise, or whatever it was. Another cool thing of a super wide angle lens basically is that leans, if you go very wide, not leans, lines. Lines will lean into your picture. You can see this here on the bamboo forest, basically, where all the lines sort of bend a little bit. So this can create leading lines as well. Or if you're in very small places, you can basically capture everything, like in this cave. My zoom lens would have never been able to capture actually the whole thing, but with a wide angle lens, you can do that because you can see more. In other words, a 10 to 20 or any other super wide angle lens will give you more creative options, but they also will make it a bit more complicated because you will have to compose every time. So for landscape, the more versatile option, as always, is the 20 to 200. But if you want to challenge yourself, I strongly suggest at least checking out a super wide angle lens. 10 to 20, something in that range with an aperture ideally of 2.8 should allow you to, be creative enough. If we now look overall, then in my humble opinion, the most versatile lens you can get is something in the range of 20-200, with as low as an aperture as your budget allows basically. You can get reasonably close, you can get reasonably far, it's a good all-rounder. If you're like me and you're traveling a lot and you're switching between landscapes and cities and portraits and whatever, then a versatile lens like that is definitely the best bet. For landscapes, cityscapes, anything where you need to capture a lot, that'll be 10-20 in my opinion. In that range. So at the beginning of this video, we tried to find out who you are, and I hope by now you have an idea as to what you like and at least the kind of lens that you need to accomplish your way of photography. The only thing left to do for you is to go out there, Google now basically your particular camera and the kind of lens you want in its focal range, and then find a brand that fits your budget. I recommend to also check out brands like Tamron or Sigma because they are usually a little bit cheaper than your camera specific lenses. And unless you need to print your image in a size that covers a whole building, these kind of lenses are more than good enough for the quality that we need in our everyday life. Also, go out there and check your local stores, because maybe you can simply try them for a couple of days before you have to decide which ones you want to buy. But whatever you do, go out there and follow that particular passion of yours. Thank you for watching. If you did like this video, I would appreciate if you can hit the like as well as subscribe button to not miss more videos. Other than that, have a good one.